B2B services, and today we're going to be talking about authenticating users with Amazon's Cognito service. Now, before we jump straight into Cognito, I want to take a quick second to examine what's so important about authentication services like Cognito in the first place. In an era defined by digital revolution, we find ourselves navigating an increasingly complex online landscape. And as our lives migrate into the virtual realm, a question that becomes increasingly more important is, how do we authenticate the identity of users in a world without physical boundaries? As business and commerce are switching to virtual interactions more and more every day, how can you be sure that the person on the other end of a connection is the customer or employee they claim to be? While this is certainly a fairly difficult question, there are a litany of services that exist precisely to answer it, and of course, with there being a lot of services, all of these options can really make your head spin. Unfortunately, for the vast array of internet services that are hosted on AWS, Amazon Web Services, there is a simple yet robust solution in the form of Amazon Cognito. So what exactly is Amazon Cognito? Well, Cognito is one of the numerous tools in the AWS kit, and it's designed for facilitating the authentication of users. Now, many of you may have heard of a similar AWS service called IAM that is used for creating and authenticating users. But whereas IAM is generally used for controlling admin and developer access to your AWS account, Cognito is specifically tailored to authenticating external users of hosted applications. Now, why would you want to use Cognito? Well, it not only ensures the security of logins, but it also is incredibly user-friendly, making integration with AWS hosted applications a complete breeze, even for those with a moderate number of users. So let's take a look here at the dashboard. You can see Cognito offers an extensive array of native functions to facilitate the creation and management of user accounts. Here we can create user accounts, and let's take a look at what that looks like. So if we click here on Create User, we can see that there are a wide variety of ways that we can create our users. So we have the ability to set alias, the attributes that they can use to sign in, an invitation message that will be sent in the form of an email. We can set their username, their email address, their phone number. We can also mark both of these as verified if we want to. We can also choose to set them a temporary password, or we can have Amazon Cognito automatically generate one for us. And if we do, it'll only be a temporary password. You don't actually get to manage people's internal passwords here like you would with something like Active Directory. So, and this is all fairly great for creating users, and you can do it fairly quick. It doesn't take a whole lot of setup to do. But what if we wanted to simplify this process even further? So if we wanted to make this process even more simple, we can click over here in the Sign In Experience tab, and we actually have more ways to sign people in. So if you look down here where it says Federated Identity Provider Sign In, if we were to add an identity provider here, then we would have the ability to use third-party login services. So Amazon has already taken the liberty of doing a couple of third-party services for you. Pretty much the most popular services currently on the market being Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple IDs. And those are really great and make it really quick to set up. Setting these up is really just as simple as registering your app with whatever service you want to use and then entering the app ID in for that specific service. And while it is really useful to use these pre-made ones, not necessarily everybody is going to want to use a pre-made service like Facebook or Google, especially if you're doing something like an internal intranet. So Amazon Cognito also has you covered there. So I've gone ahead and created a demo account here on Auth0, which is a fairly popular third-party service for creating and managing user accounts. And we're going to demonstrate ways that you could add custom third-party support. So if we look specifically here, there are two different options. One is SAML and the other is OpenID Connect, or OIDC for short. We'll go ahead and take a look at OpenID Connect first because it is usually the more simple of the two to set up. And so when you're setting it up, you basically just select OpenID Connect from the federated sign-in, and then it's going to ask you for a few things to set up this connection. So first it'll ask you to give it a provider name. I've gone ahead and done that already, and I've already filled all of this out because copying the information over can take a few minutes, but basically you'll just fill in a provider name. And then over here, if you look in the app settings for Auth0, and every identity provider is going to be slightly different. So you may have to change some of these instructions for your specific identity provider, and you can certainly make a lot of these steps more complicated as well. This is just meant to be a simple demonstration of it. But in general, you'll have basically all of the information Amazon Cognito is looking for provided by the identity provider, and you'll fill them in. So for example, it asks for the client ID, and we would fill in the client ID, client secret as well. If you have other scopes that you want for your OpenID Connect, you can include those here. Right now, we're just going to stick with the default, which is just OpenID. Identifiers is another optional thing that we could add. So if the username of our website or our app had a sign-in that utilized like email addresses, if we had certain domains that we wanted to separate out into different login sources, then we could specify them here, so that way it would automatically redirect users based on their domain. The attribute request method is going to be pretty much specific for your specific identity provider. The identity provider is basically going to tell you how you need to do this. For Auth0, it's going to be get, and for most of them, it's going to be get. And then here comes the final part. So it's going to look for the endpoints that you're using to connect to your OIDC provider. You can have it automatically fill in through a main issuer URL, or you can manually input them all. I've gone ahead and manually input them all, and for reference in Auth0, if you come down here and go to the advanced settings and endpoints, it shows you all of the endpoints that you're going to use over here. And basically you just fill those in, matching the information from your identity provider. And then the final part is to map attributes between the provider and your user pool. So the data that's basically going to be taken from the identity provider and then matched to the attributes in your user pool. The only one that I have here is email, and we're just going to match it to email in the attribute. And then once you have all of that filled out, then you can just click add identity provider, and it will go ahead and add that. So now your app could sign in with Auth0. Similarly, if you wanted to have a slightly different system, there is another way to do third-party connections using what's called SAML. So SAML is actually slightly easier to set up in some circumstances, but can also be more complex. Basically, for a simple service like Auth0 that automatically creates what's called the SAML metadata document, you don't really have to do much other than fill out this metadata document endpoint URL, which we also got over here in the Advanced tab on Auth0. That's right here. And filling that out is basically all you have to do. It'll automatically create that document for you in Auth0 and set it up, so that way you don't have to do it yourself. If you wanted to make it more complex, metadata documents can be done by hand. They're basically just XML documents, and you can create them to be as custom as you'd like in order to separate things like different user permissions. So, and then similar to the OIDC connection, we have the user pool attribute and the SAML attribute. And once again, we're just going to connect email to email. And then once you have that connected, then we're just going to go ahead and click add identity provider again. And we can see that it added that as well. So now we would be able to connect to our Auth0 test account from any app that we had hosted on our AWS service using Auth0 using Auth0 with both OpenID or SAML, just depending on how we configured the app itself. So in closing, I hope you all got some good insight into the strengths and flexibility of Amazon Cognito, and hopefully you're starting to get some ideas on how you could use this wonderful service that Amazon provides to grow your business while making it faster and smoother to authenticate users for both your administrators and your customers. If you have any questions about setting up Amazon Cognito, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. Whether it's a simple question about configuration or you're looking for someone to build an authentication system for your app, we can help take the next step to turn those ideas into reality.